Well, there's so much emphasis, and quite rightly, on our hospitals in Gauteng with COVID-19, the third wave, hitting us really hard. It's all too easy to forget the psychological impact of coping with a pandemic. Losing loved ones, being isolated by lockdowns, financial concerns, it all takes its toll. And it seems our young people could be taking some real strain as well. At Wits University, 2 students have tragically taken their own lives in the past 3 weeks. And while it's impossible to say what caused those acts, mental health is a crucial concern at this time. And to discuss this now, I'm joined on the telephone by clinical psychologist Viwe Dweba and Dean of Student Affairs at Wits University, Jerome September. Jerome September, I'm going to start with you, and thank you so much for chatting to us about a really difficult and sensitive topic. 2 suicides amongst the student body in just 3 weeks at Wits University. Apparently, we hear these 2 students were doing well academically. Do you have any understanding of what led to them taking their own lives?
Good evening, Sally, and thank you so much for having me. We don't. We are asking ourselves a host of questions, as I'm sure the family and friends of the 2 students are doing. What we know is that both students did very well academically. They were both in their final year. And what we do know is that both of them had their funding resolved, at least in terms of their studies. Neither one of them, of course, left notes. And so there are a number of questions that we are asking ourselves and that we need to continue asking ourselves about what might have happened in this case. But as you rightfully say, the mental health challenge is a major one. And, of course, our current context makes some of these things even worse.
Have suicides, attempted or those that have carried through, increased during this pandemic time? I'm thinking from sort of March last year until the present day.
To my knowledge, yes, we have certainly had more students coming forward asking for assistance. At our counselling services, we have certainly seen a spike of that. And what we've also noticed, at least this year, is a particular increase in the number of students coming forward who are in their final years of study. What we've picked up from that, from our counselling service, is that there's particular uncertainties around the future, around job prospects, and just around general well-being at this particular time.
All right, Ms. Dweba, I want to bring you in here. You're on the telephone line for us this evening. I want to speak to you about how teens and young adults cope with the lockdown impact. Of course, we all find it a stressful time, but particularly for young people who are meant to be making their mark on the world, who want to explore the world, who want to take risks, who sometimes want to travel. Has it been particularly tough from a psychological impact for that particular group?
Well, firstly, good evening, Sally, and thank you so much for having me. I think it's been incredibly difficult for our teenagers and our young adults. Because, of course, in your adolescence and very early adulthood, your social development is something that is crucial. And we are already social beings by design. And what the lockdown has done is that it's deprived an already very social group developmentally of that all-important social interaction. Because, of course, school and varsity is not just about the academics. Of course, that's a primary reason that they're there. But the biggest thing that helps them to get through that phase of their studies, that phase of designing their lives, is also very much the social aspect, because that's also an important area of development for them at that time.
What are the signs, the red flags perhaps, that a teen or a young adult is not coping emotionally, whether it's to do with COVID and the lockdowns, but certainly that is the most pressing issue for many youngsters? What are the signs?
So an important thing to normalize is the fact that, of course, the lockdown is going to come with a great deal of loneliness, and it'll come with its own anxieties around online learning and being able to manage one's schoolwork without feeling like, you're kind of sharing responsibility with your teacher or your lecturer. It feels like it's all on you. So those are absolutely normal experiences. The important thing to look out for if someone is not coping is we're looking for markers of depression and anxiety. So we're looking for a change in behavior and a change in your body doing what it normally does physically. So we're looking at an anxious mood, increased irritability, disturbed sleep, whether you're sleeping too much or not sleeping enough or your sleep is quite disturbed. We're looking at changes in appetite, either an increase or decrease in appetite that is noticeable and results in weight loss or weight gain. We're looking at an increase of negative thoughts and really struggling to manage those negative thoughts. Ruminations about the things that are worrying them. Feelings of hopelessness. We're looking at extreme feelings of loneliness. And occasionally, if things become severe, we're looking at suicidal ideation, kind of ranging from the fleeting thought of, it might be better if I wasn't around anymore, all the way to kind of severe suicidal ideation where one has a plan and the intent to follow through.
Jerome September at Wits University, I want to bring you back in here. The clinical psychologist has given us a long list of very worrying things to look out for. Of course, it's hard for the university to keep an eye on all your students. There are many thousands of them. But there has been some criticism coming from the SRC that the university is not doing enough to help youngsters with online learning, which is not an easy process. Saying to students, well, you have to make sure you've got access to a regular power supply to write your exams. Things like load shedding, not being able to access Wi-Fi. Those things all add, especially to a high achiever, in fact, who wants everything to be perfect. So what is the university doing? And what do you say to those criticisms that you're not doing enough?
Well, I think we can all do better. But I think what we have tried to do is to put some of the support services in place that we think will be of support. So, for example, we do give data to students to alleviate some of those challenges. We do give laptops to students. There's a range of online support services, and academics even have support groups available on WhatsApp where they are talking to students and asking them to come forward. In our residences, we also have academic advisors, we have mentors, we now have a 24-hour helpline that's available that can be downloaded onto your phone in terms of an app so that students are able to get the necessary support. We've also run a series of workshops and so on, mainly in the online space, of course, where we are assisting students with some of the tools to be able to cope during this really difficult time. For those students who are in the residences, we have outside gyms available, and we've allowed access to some of the sporting facilities. And so what we have done is also to work, in fact, with student leaders themselves and with peer mentors and peer helpers to be able to reach out to students, to be able to provide support to one another. So those are a host of some of the things that we have done. We're constantly reviewing. I mean, for example, we have increased our social workers. We now have a psychiatrist on campus. We have a psychiatric nurse.
Yeah.
We have allowed students who are in difficult home environments to be able to come back to campus, to live in rest so that they have a conducive environment. Of course, there's more we can do, but the idea... But we are trying, and we have put services in place.
All right. Viwe Dweba, a clinical psychologist, I want to bring you back in. You gave a list of things to look out for. You've also listened to what Jerome September said the university is trying to do to support students who might be in emotional distress. Is there more they could be doing? And what can parents and support groups do around those individuals who are emotionally at risk?
I think one of the things that's really difficult for universities is that they're probably also facing a challenge in terms of the number of mental health care practitioners that are servicing the university. So I think that if it's at all possible for that to actually be increased, that's incredibly important as well, because there's a great deal of mental health difficulty happening at this time because COVID, of course, has affected more than the online learning. There are very real economic issues that students are facing at home, very real deprivation, very real struggle in that regard. So I think more access to mental health care practitioners on campus is actually very important. In terms of home life, I think it's important for family members, whoever the student is living with, whether it's parents or grannies or older siblings, it's important for them to look out for a kind of marked change in behavior. Of course, we all have very different temperaments, but if you start to feel like the person that you're living with is perhaps withdrawing a lot more from family, is a lot angrier than usual, is a lot more irritable than usual, they're not quite eating the way that they used to, that is important. Also, an avoidance of schoolwork is something to look out for, because an avoidance, of course, is very indicative of anxiety. So it's important to look out for marked changes in behavior.
And how do you reach out to someone who's withdrawn from you?
The important thing is about letting them know that you can see that something is going on with them, and to offer your support, to offer a kind of a listening ear, but also to be able to understand that the person may not be in a position where they're feeling like they're safe enough to talk to you. Perhaps it could be because you're a family member and they're afraid of judgment, even if you do allow them a non-judgmental space. So offering them a line like the 24-hour SADAG line, which is 0800-567-567, to allow them to have a counselor to speak to if they don't feel comfortable speaking to their family members. So offer a non-judgmental listening ear, and if they're not comfortable speaking to you, point them in the direction of resources where they can find help.
Excellent advice, and thank you so much, clinical psychologist Viwe Dweba, and that number 0800-567-567. Many thanks as well to the Dean of Student Affairs at Wits University, Jerome September.